or C-sections were a thing back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They probably weren't as smooth as they are now.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Especially because you get this big scar across your stomach.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, they look good now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I'm glad we're on this team. You know what I mean?
Man, I just wouldn't do it. I'd adopt if I felt like it, but like, because like you can die, you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, that's like back in the day. I mean, just 100 years ago or 200 years ago. I mean, it was like a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it wasn't like my mom had a brother that died, you know, in the crib, and that was like,
oh man.
But I think she had 9 brothers and sisters, 8 or 9. Maybe she was maybe 9 including her. But for families that size back when she was born in the 50s, like that, it was kind of normal for like at least one of the kids not to make it.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Well, there's a thing where like when you guys have your first kid, they talk to you about, it's called 𝐼s, and it's and it's like the scariest shit. So the nurse was telling me about it. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then for like the first 6 months of his life, if he like sneezed, I'd be like over the crib.
Yeah.
You know?
My the first sudden death I ever went to as a cop when I was 20 years old was a 𝐮s case. Baby was 8 months old.
Oh my God, man. What a nightmare.
Still remember his name. It was terrible. Like first thing in the morning, it was probably 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And like beautiful day out, remember? And so I was still on with my field coach. I think that's how little service I had. I was like, I had a couple of months service. And then I go into the house and the ambulance crew's already there, and the ambulance crew is crying. The mom is there and she's hysterical, and the dad's upstairs with the baby. Man, oh man, it was fucking awful. And I remember my supervisor showed up and she started crying. And then my field coach was tearing up, and I'm looking at these people like, holy fuck, like this is really, really bad. And I wasn't crying. I was like, is there something fucking wrong with me? But I was so like, you know, like drilled into me at that point to be kind of like a robot. But it was tough. Like I remember the dad like didn't want to, like we have to, it's still an investigation at that point. So like the coroner needs to do an autopsy on the baby, find out why. But I remember trying to take the baby from the dad. We were with him for like a couple hours, and he was just rocking back and forth with the baby. This little baby just stiff as a board, you know, when we took him from him. And passed it. Then the funeral home guys came to pick up the baby to do the transport to the hospital where they do the autopsy. And those guys started crying, you know? So it's like people that you never see cry were crying, you know? Awful.
Man, that would be my last day. I couldn't, anything with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was 𝐮s, you know, sudden infant death syndrome. And the baby just stopped breathing at night, you know? And that was, I think he had a bit of like a cold or flu or maybe something like that, but nothing that was unusual. And they just woke up that morning and that was it. You know?
That's
terrible.
It's a nightmare, man. It's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start the podcast off with some...
yeah. Good Lord. Yeah.
Pam told me, so I was like terrified with the kids.
Yeah.
And she told me this story where this dad, it was his turn to stay up with the baby, and he had the baby on his chest.
Yeah.
And they were on the couch, and he fell asleep, and the baby tucked in on the side and smothered.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't tell me any more stories. Like, I don't want to hear anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that happened. Now, this is obviously much less serious, but I'm pretty sure that happened with one of my dogs, because we sleep with the dogs in the bed.
Yeah.
My little friend, she's Stevie, Mr. Steve. I woke up and he usually like sleeps like he wants to be like right up in my face, like cheek on cheek.
That's cute.
And I sleep like a vampire. I don't like move at all in my sleep. So, but I must have turned some like in that night. And he's like a pretty big unit. This Frenchie, like he's a 33-pound Frenchie. And but I wake up to him like yelping, and he doesn't yelp at anything. He's a little sweetie, but he's tough as nails. Like he never, nothing ever seems to faze him. But he hurt his neck somehow, and I suspect like I must have rolled on him or something, or moved my body in a certain way and like hurt his neck. So didn't know it at the time, but he then like was all stiff and couldn't move, and I'm like, oh my god! And I just like paralyzed my dog, being a fat ass in bed, being a big fat fucker, you know. And so, anyways, the usual happens. The missus, she freaks out, and not at me, but at the situation. And I'm like, it was on the weekend, and I was like, let's just wait till Monday. We'll keep them kenneled. You know, they're not going to be able to tell us anything, you know. But no, we had to do a call out and pay all that money just to have the vet say, keep them kenneled. It's not worth doing a CT scan right now and all this stuff, you know? So, and then within a couple of days, he was best kind.
Oh,
so
that's good, man.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I get like razzed enough, or, you know, just over dogs. So I can't imagine what like kids are like. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, at least kids can kind of tell you when they can speak, like what's wrong with them. You know, they can tell you what's up.
Yeah.
But, you know, until you get to that stage, you know, it's like, you know, it's hard not to be one of those helicopter parents, eh?
Oh, absolutely. Well, like we had dogs before, and they're like your babies.
Yeah.
And I still love the dogs, so my babies. But like when I had kids, like if one of the kids was cold, I'd like kill the dog, make a hat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it really changes.
Yeah.
And like, you know,
Dennis said that too. Like, you know, he loved his dogs. Like, and then as soon as he had his son, he was like, man, like, yeah, exactly. He said the same thing. Like,
yeah,
you know?
It changes, and it's weird. It's like a switch. It's like a switch.
Yeah.
And I find it weird when some dudes don't get that switch, and they're still all about them. Like they don't like nut up, I guess.
Yeah.
And but I don't know.
Just an Elon Musk, just having babies and like, like living your life.
Here's
like,
some money.
I don't have time to, you know, to parent. Like I got to try to run the world and like launch rockets into space.
That's right.
Yeah. Some guys are like that. Hey.
Yeah. I find it really
I'd say
confusing.
Trump is probably is like, but I mean, people in Trump's family seem to love him, right? Like his grandkids and everything, they all like look at him like he's, you know, he's like this sweet grandfather. Right?
I feel like if you're like a strong role model, that is also just as useful.
Yeah, that's true.
Like if you were, I'll say a weak man.
Yeah.
And like you're always there.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. But
you're
like,
on the
as
sticks.
you get older,
you're on the sticks just playing vids.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. It's like, well, you never really taught me anything.
Yeah.
And then like, so I can understand it. Like they're getting shit done. And
yeah, that's like my dad. My dad was like, he worked his ass off, you know, worked a lot, you know, and but you see that as a kid, and it didn't really bother me as a kid, you know. It's just like, this is like, holy shit, my dad works hard, you know.
Yeah.
Like he's not around a lot, and he's working late every night, but like that's what men do, type thing.
Absolutely.
You know? But you know, he's still a great dad, but you know.
Yeah, I know there's a balance there for sure.
Yeah.
And because like I got obsessed when Giles turned like 8 and he started to have opinions, and
right.
You know, I seen him, if like bad things happened, he could start making excuses.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff.
Yeah.
And he was talking about like the important thing is throwing them into things and being like, you got this, and then letting them kind of fail. And we've had the chat where it's like, you know, that's loser talk, and you're not a loser.
Right.
So don't do it. You know, it's if someone's not passing you the ball, that sucks.
Yeah.
But like,
you can't worry about what you can't control.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's just your inner bitch.
For
like,
sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
nip that in the bud early.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a bunch of videos. There's a bit of an order, but I found all Canadian videos.
Cool. Yeah.
So let's get into it.
We'll check them out and review them. See how they go down.
First, details of a terrifying home invasion in Markham.
Masked and armed suspects caught on camera entering a home. 3 adults and a child were inside at the time. Our Beth McTennell joins us live with the story. Beth.
Michelle, this armed home invasion took place on Wednesday, just after midnight, near Woodbine and Victoria Square in Markham, and the video is frightening to watch. Police say 3 adults and a small child were home, and police say one of the victims told them that the 4 suspects pointed firearms at them and demanded money. In the video, we see a red SUV with a silver roof rack parked before 4 suspects are seen walking down the sidewalk.
Hoods up, gloved up.
They rush inside and are seen turning the lights on and off. Then one suspect is clearly seen with a gun before appearing to pick something up off the table and throwing it to the ground.
No indication that the victims were known to the suspects. Anytime we have a home invasion,
He must be a lawful gun owner, hey?
What's that?
He must be one of those pesky lawful gun owners, right?
Yeah.
Doing home invasions.
Different than break and enters. Generally speaking, these are not random events. They're not the sorts of things that happen on a day-to-day basis. And we often find that while it may not be the specific...
Like, where do these guys get guns? Like,
a lot of them just trafficking from the U.S. border.
Okay.
So because our border is so, I mean, Trump talks about us securing our border, and securing the border would have more of an effect on gun violence in Canada than any gun law they could put in place, because that's where people with criminal records or bad guys are going to get guns, because they get them illegally. They're not buying them legally. So there's a trace of who bought the gun and when they bought the gun. So yeah, I mean, majority of that stuff comes from the U.S. You know, our border security is so weak.
I think that's what the whole terror thing is about.
A lot of it is, yeah,
Yeah, like,
yeah, but
secure your border.
yeah. So I mean, like, you're just creating an industry, a trafficking industry with drugs, firearms, and it just leads to chaos. You have to control, if you're a sovereign nation, you have to control your borders, because we see what happens when you don't. And but of course, our current government is using this as like a political tool to so people get distracted from the real issue, and it's their economic policies that are failing, that crushed us. But if they can just make Trump out to be the big bad that is ruining our economy by these tariffs, which is not the case.
No.
But yeah, the whole issue is border security. You know?
It's driving me crazy because there's a bunch of people around that are talking about this, and they're like, you know, this is crazy. You got these tariffs on us, or ruin our economy, but like, the cost of living is through the roof, and all of our infrastructure and services, like, you go to the hospital for a sore throat now because you can't find a doctor.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I think there's deeper issues here.
Yeah.
Than that, you know. And
yeah. With the, I mean, like, so the tariffs, I mean, I think a lot of people are confused with the tariffs, where, you know, when you implement it, when a government implements a tariff on another country, the citizens are picking up the tab for buying, or the businesses for buying whatever products are coming from that country. So for us, when we already have a shitty economy and people are struggling, to put tariffs on U.S. supplies when their economy is the biggest economy in the world, and it's a drop in the bucket to them, really, and it's not going to have, it's like a bump in the road. And they're the best at logistics on the planet, as far as like logistics and like deploying resources in different places, allocating resources. There's nobody better than the Americans. You see that with their military. That's why their military is so is one of the reasons. Not only because it's so big, and all the gear they have is good. Um, like their ability just to deploy resources on the opposite side of the planet is light years ahead of every other country. And like you see, like Russia couldn't deploy resources effectively for the Ukraine war in the first few weeks, and they share a border. But so the U.S. is going to be fine, but for us to implement counter tariffs on their stuff it just hurts the citizens more. We need tax breaks.
Yeah.
Is what we need, and for a government to stop spending so much fucking money. It's like they've tripled or they've doubled the debt. I think we're closing in on $2 trillion in debt. This government has spent more money than every other prime minister combined by like a couple of factors. And what do we have to show for it? Like there's no, like, our infrastructure in our country, where we ballooned our population up like 20% or 25% over the course of the past like 4 years or 5 years since COVID hit. Like we didn't have the infrastructure to keep up with that immigration.
No.
So that's why you have the doctor issue, and nobody has a family doctor, or you go into the waiting room at the hospital and the emergency room, and you're there for like minimum 8 hours here, minimum. And housing, there's not enough housing for people. So I mean, all this is like it can all like kind of circle back to securing your borders and having like good immigration policies. And we used to have good immigration, but
it's just a
free for all.
staple. It's a staple of a sovereign nation.
Yeah,
is to have a good immigration policy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, how can you, like, for the first time ever in like I don't know how many years, like the life expectancy for Canadians is going down. So why is that? It's because we have a population that is too big for infrastructure to handle. People aren't getting like the medical resources they need. We're importing a lot of people from third world countries that may not already have the best of health as well, and that need extra health services. So, I mean, you want to be able to help people that are in need, but when you don't have the resources to help yourselves, and then you're bringing these people in, and then those poor people that immigrate here expecting a better life, they're waiting like for doctors, and they can't find housing, and so. And there's so many loopholes with the immigration stuff, like the student visa programs.
Yeah,
where they issued hundreds of thousands of student visas to people in other countries, and only a fraction of them actually show up for the universities that they say that they're going to go to.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, the whole thing is just off the rails.
Yeah, it's chaos. Hopefully there's going to be a change soon.
We'll
get back to
like the number one indicator for like a safe environment in a country is a good economy. Because when the country's prospering and people have jobs and they have money, they don't need to resort to bullshit like home invasions like this. So when you see this stuff happening, or when you see these things spiraling out of control, and we're taxed, I think in Newfoundland we're taxed higher than everybody in North America. Like if you look at it, so people are going to look for means to make money themselves, and a lot of that is through unconventional means, right?
Yeah, like there's 5 guys are walking down the street already gloved up.
Yeah.
Like, is that drugs? Like, it seems so premeditated. Do you think they knew the victims?
Well, it usually is. It typically is. I mean, like 10 years ago, I would have bet my house on it. But like we're saying now, in today's day and age, where people are that desperate because our country is broken financially, then you get crazier things are just going to happen. So I guess we'll have to watch more and see what goes down. but
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I think they said that there was no indication that they were known to the homeowners, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
Appealing to witnesses and anyone with information, especially video, to come forward. Reporting live
So that's
from
it. So
Mountain.
if you go back, let's just see when they've entered the house, and we'll see him kind of walking around here. Let's pause there. Or
come on,
slowly.
internet.
But first, detail.
So this is standard like home invasion stuff. They don't park their vehicle in front of the house. They park it down the road.
Okay.
So, even when they're fleeing, nobody's getting a plate. So the police will show up, and the homeowners will say, well, they took off on foot. So then they'll start a dog track, and then the dog will track to where they got in the vehicle, and then that'll be it.
And then they're gone.
So unless you have a witness or surveillance video that identified that vehicle and sees them getting into it, then you're kind of at a dead end.
In the video, we see
Oh,
a
you're-
red
yeah, I
SUV
guess-
with a silver roof rack parked before 4 suspects are seen walking down the sidewalk. When they arrive at the home, they rush inside and are seen turning the lights on and off. Then one suspect is clearly seen with a gun before appearing to pick something up off the table and throwing it to the ground.
No indication that the victims were known to the suspects. Anytime we have a home invasion, which is when someone's
Who knows?
with the
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I wonder why they flick the lights on and off.
Oh, I mean, they're just clearing the rooms, I guess.
Gotcha.
They're just looking in the room, see if there's anybody in there. I would assume. I don't know why. It might be just a reaction, that the guy flicked the lights on and off. But I mean, like if I'm going into a house with my firearm and you're clearing the house, you'll have your flashlight out at first until you find a switch. Hit the switch.
Okay.
And keep on going. You don't want to have a flashlight in your hand and a gun if you don't have to. That's a pain in the ass. It's a lot harder to shoot one-handed or with your support hand and a flashlight like punched into your gun like that.
I never thought about that.
That sucks.
Okay.
It sucks. There's certain ways that people will teach it. One of my favorite ways is like you're holding a flash like this and you have it pressed up against the pistol. Other people have it like this, which is tough. Depends on where your button is, or like this. That's tough. Or there's like the FBI way where they teach it where they'll have their flashlight out and it's out beyond like the center point of your body. So if I'm walking down a hallway and somebody sees that light and they go to shoot, they're more likely going to shoot at the light and shoot at you. So if you got that light right here, they're just going to be shooting where the light is. So you're more likely to get it in the chest.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's probably the best way to do it. But I think most police forces these days, except like the RCMP, they're still rocking their old Smith & Wessons, but most police forces have that light on the gun.
The attachment.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it more dangerous if you have the light attachment where it's in front of your center mass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be more dangerous than the FBI way, but the benefits of being able to shoot that way and not have to worry about your support hand
Gotcha.
with that gun, it would outweigh that because you're just going to be more accurate. You're going to be quicker on the draw. You're going to be more confident walking around. You're going to have a free hand if you need it as well. So.
All right, let's see what's next.
Relief tonight for a Milton man who was accused of second-degree murder. It was at this home back in February that Ali Mian opened fire on an intruder who had broken in. His mother was in the house at the time. Today, that charge was withdrawn as we learn new details about exactly what happened. More from our crime specialist, Catherine McDonald.
So, I heard about this like 3 weeks ago, and a guy shot a home intruder, and he was cleared of all charges.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before that if your life is in danger, you're good, basically. If you
you have to be able to articulate it in a way that paints the picture that you had no choice, to do what you did. So, if somebody's in your house with a firearm, I mean, it's not on you just to get executed by that person if they're posing a threat to you. And the minute somebody walks through the door with a firearm, that is a threat to your life for sure, and other weapons are included in that, but you gotta be able to paint the picture to the prosecutors, because in Canada they all want blood for if somebody dies. Doesn't matter if it's the bad guy or the good guy in the situation. The prosecutors are going to want to get a charge there. It's lame, but that's just the way it is. So I mean, like you need like a good lawyer. The problem that I talked to you before about it is if you just, as soon as that situation happens, you just tell the whole story to the police. But in that moment when you're jacked up, you might be like, you're not thinking as clearly as you should be thinking when you need to articulate yourself perfectly in that moment. So you'd end up getting detained or arrested because there's a dead person and that needs to be investigated. But you got to wait till you cool down and get some legal advice before you say anything to the police at all, because anything you say is used in evidence.
Yeah.
They'll caution you that, and they'll be taking notes. And you
mentioned before, like, wait 24 hours. And
yeah, there's studies that like show like there's I don't know them offhand, but there's a certain time frame where you've calmed down, the memories are still vivid enough for you to paint the picture. So it's usually like 48 hours to like 72 hours, I think, is what that study is.
Okay.
So when you are the good guy in the situation, you're defending your home, your family, it's going to be beneficial for you to give a statement under the direction of your lawyer. But you don't want to do that without getting advice first, for sure.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't know if they actually. Yeah, they don't show the crime here. But
yeah, so I mean, it's like I don't know anything about this, but I'm assuming this person had a weapon.
He shot him. Or sorry, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think the intruder had a gun.
Yeah, it's about, like, people need to have a game plan in their head along with the rest of the members in their family for what happens in these situations, because you don't want to play it by ear as it's going down. You're going to fuck it up. You want, when you talk about like a situation like this to your family, if somebody's breaking into the house, you want them to stay where they are, so where they, and there's and that's not the time to be arguing with you or saying like, why, what's going on, stuff like that. So that's the point of like a pre-planned discussion. And then it's about finding that position in your house where you're gonna be able to challenge that person in an advantage. So at the top of a staircase, or around a corner or something like that, where you have you basically wait for them to come to you, knowing that your family is behind you and safe. And at that point, where you've essentially drawn the line in the sand, and if that person's still advancing towards you with whatever weapon they have, then you got to do what you got to do to protect you and your family. So, and that should, if you can articulate it in that way with all the rest of the details that would go in that situation, then you should be good.
Yeah, I so when that happened across the street, I kind of freaked out. I ended up getting it's sounds funny, but it's a pellet gun. It's a revolver.
Yeah.
And it shoots 22 pellets, but they're in a casing.
22 LRs.
Yeah.
They're like that big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, they're smaller than that, but they're in a casing.
Okay.
And they're pretty powerful. So after talking to you then on the pod the first time, I was like, all right, so everyone goes into Xavier's room and I'll stay at the top of the stairs, and right. I'll have the pellet gun and I can kind of fire down if I need to.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't advise using a pellet gun. You know what I mean?
No.
Like it wouldn't be. I mean, if you need a gun, you can get a good non-restricted gun, any pump action shotgun. We're in Canada, so your options are limited, but a pump action shotgun with some 00 buck in it, great. Or
I'll just be on the top of the stairs throwing baseballs down.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. Just like you got the paint can set up, throw.
Down there pouring dinkies under the windows.
Yep. But pump action shotguns are hard to manage in stressful situations if you're not used to using pumps, because they got a good kick to them, and a lot of people will short stroke that action. And if they need to fire another shot because they're all jacked up, and then cause a malfunction, but you can also get like lever action guns, like 357 Magnums, that they don't have that much kick, but it's delivering essentially the same power as essentially like a 357 Magnum is like if you think of a 38 special like revolver.
Okay.
It's about the same size. Yeah, it's the same size caliber bullet with a bigger casing. And you can shoot 38 specials out of 357 Magnums as well. But lever action, single shot, racket, lever. You got another one in the chamber, shot, racket. I mean, those are non-restricted guns, easy to store. So you can have them in a position in your house that is legal, legally stored,
how, I know there's restrictions now on mags, lever action has a tube, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So what does that look like? Like how many bullets can you legally have in the tube? How big can the tube be?
I don't think there's any restrictions on a tube, the tube length, because the tube, it all depends on how long the barrel is for how many rounds you can fit in the tube.
Okay.
So like a standard lever action 357 mag is like, I think you get 8 or 9 in that tube, so it's, you got a good amount in there. Like a smaller pump shotgun, which is about 5 00 bucks in it, so there's semi-auto shotguns that are non-restricted as well. I mean, I got a Benelli M4, which is a semi-auto shotgun, and it's great. Like that thing's legal. It like spits fire. This thing, like the U.S. Marine Corps has used it forever, and it's like a venerable shotgun. It's been battle tested and whatnot. So you can have that, but a 9mm pistol with 10 rounds is illegal. Like, it makes no sense.
No,
right?
it's
so like if you're spitting, say you got 5 rounds in that thing and it's all 00 buck, and there's 8 to 9 pellets in 00 buck, that's 45 rounds in those 5 cartridges, right? So, and all those 00 buck projectiles are all about like 9mm size projectiles, like bullets, right? So, so that's 45 little 9mm rounds coming out of that 00 buck, and like 45 like a higher number than 10,
That's
so,
right. Yeah.
So the laws make no sense.
No. I'm hoping that they get reversed.
I'm worried about it too, because I mean, like, if the Conservatives get in, Trudeau has resigned, and canceled our parliament and canceled our democracy. And at the same time, he just appointed like a bunch, like 100 senators or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Never heard about that
Yeah.
part.
So he just recently appointed a bunch of senators who are now going to have, control over legislation and whatnot. So like, I'm not like it may be difficult. They have like laws like where you have these laws that are so twisted in people's ideologies, whether they make sense in reality or not, that like leftist people are never going to vote for to relax on these gun laws on lawful gun owners, because they're in that cult of, guns are bad, we need to get rid of guns.
Yeah.
So, but it in a perfect world that is like Star Trek, where you have control over everything, and it's like this perfect socialist kind of society where you have enough resources and everything works and everybody behaves themselves. Yeah, like you can get away with that, but when you don't have a border that's secure, like we were talking about before, and it's easier for a law-abiding citizen or a criminal to get a gun on the black market than it is to buy one at a local gun store, and that's just the route they're going to take. And the gun crime and gun violence in Canada is way higher than it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild that they can't see the correlation between registering a firearm to your name.
Yeah,
like you're not going to go out and do crime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and to get a pistol, I mean, you need a restricted license.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a background check with that. There's a criminal record check with that. So, a bad guy is not going to go through the effort to do all that and obtain a firearm legally, which can be traced back to them. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
They're going to find alternative means to obtain those guns and use them to commit their crimes.
Well, when that bill came out, I think it's Bill C-21 or Bill C-16, but when that bill came out, a police chief, I believe was in Calgary at that time, came out and they were like, this will have no effect on gun violence because registered law-abiding gun owners don't commit these crimes.
And most police chiefs and commissioners and all that, they're too afraid to even talk about reality because they're often appointed in their positions by politicians. And so they don't even want to talk about statistics that aren't going to fall in line with whatever party is in power's ideology, So the whole narrative around gun violence in Canada on the rise is so subdued, and it's not even talked about. You don't hear like mainstream media talk about it because they're like, well, Trudeau like implemented these new gun laws, so why isn't the gun crime dropping?
No, it's so frustrating. Like the CBC used to be a staple, and now it's just a rag for the Liberal Party. Yeah, and like Rebel News has exploded because they're boots to the ground journalists.
Yeah, and they're on the opposite end of the spectrum. But the reason why they're exploding, like, and if all things were equal, people probably wouldn't gravitate to Rebel News. But because they have no alternative to get like you said, like boots on the ground, like storytelling from that perspective, they have no, like they just have no choice but to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, media wise, but you just can't expect state-funded media, which gets them like their budget from the state, to paint an accurate picture. I mean, it's so antithetical for real journalism. Like, it's very 1984, like
George Orwell.
Yeah,
Well, 25% of a mainstream media journalist's salary comes directly from the government.
Yeah, and most of the consumers of mainstream media these days are people in a certain age above, like I think it's like 50 years old and above or something like that. So if you look at like who people are more likely to vote for. The people in that age category are more likely to vote liberal, um, which is usually the opposite. Like in previous times, in like the George Bush Cheney era of the right and Republicans, when they were the war hawks, like the youth like couldn't stand the right, But now it's this total polar opposite now, where the liberals are the war hawks, wanting to fund these foreign wars, and they're controlling the media. And then now the older people, who, when all they consume is like cable television news, and all they see is the liberals, or that state-funded media carrying water for the government,
Yeah.
and any heat that is on the government is minimized or not even talked about, or given some kind of a pass. Then they're just like, okay, it's not that bad. But you know what is bad? Donald Trump. Donald Trump's really bad.
Yeah,
He-
Musk
yeah,
is,
yeah.
he's planning an unelected coup,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah,
did you see the all of the Democratic reps saying the same speech about Doge?
I did. Yeah, yeah,
Man, that was painful to watch.
yeah. There was like, I think they lined up like 20 of them, like of these videos of them all reading from this script.
They're all sitting down. They're all using a Rode mic,
Yeah.
and they say something with shit in it to
Yeah.
appeal, to
Yeah.
show how off the cuff they are.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like fucking 20 of them
Yeah.
saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's when a party and these ideologies have essentially lost the plot, and their policies and these things just don't hold up in a court of public opinion, or like a long format discussion, and they can't argue these things without getting mad and shouting over the other person, or canceling the other person, or whatever it is. Then they have to stick to a script, because and they all have to be on the same page, and it's just gross.
Oh, it is
So gross.
Well, I have a bunch of boomers in my family,
Yeah.
and even I'm in the tech industry, and there's a lot of people that are
Right.
the university hive mind.
Yeah.
We're the elite, and
Yeah.
completely dropped the middle class, which is where the left used to live. It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
the conservatives are like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When you're a
Yeah.
kid, you're like, man,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But so I'll debate them on these things, and their
Right.
big things are like, well, Donald Trump is, he's a tyrant, and
Yeah.
like Elon Musk is coming in and he's canceling foreign aid and all these things, and I'm like, but the last 4 years have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
And he was in power before,
Right.
and he wasn't putting people in cages,
Yeah.
it's so silly. But I noticed all of them, well, not all of them, but two people said, well, I'm not going to debate you on it, because there's nothing that they can say.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just a cult. It's
Yeah.
like,
they can't say anything, or they just straight up don't even believe what you're saying.
yeah,
Because they've never even, like, if I'm discussing this stuff with my parents, which is like, like all they consume is cable news television. So, Trump is literally the devil. Trudeau's doing the best he can, and
yeah,
like the guy's had more scandals than you can count. Like if you can use AI or whatever and say, list every scandal of corruption that Justin Trudeau has had involvement in. The list is endless. It's
I bet.
nuts. It's nuts. Because you can't Google something like that, because then Google will give you the results that they want you to see.
Yep.
But if you use AI, like Grok or whatever, like it'll list them all, and it's insane. None of it. You don't hear a peep about any of these scandals, but it's just a constant stream of corruption, and even like treasonous, like members of parliament getting money from like foreign countries. Everything that they accuse Trump of being with the Russia stuff is what Canada is with China. And it's but it just doesn't get talked about. And the Russian thing with Trump got totally disproven. It was found out that whole Steele dossier that was funded by
the Clintons,
the Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
Like that actually came out, and Trump could have prosecuted them for that back then, but chose not to because he was like, it's a bad precedent to set to prosecute your political opponents. You know, and
he never seen that coming.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, they went after him with fire and fury, right? But yeah, that whole thing was bullshit, and everybody believed it. Like, so, like how many times do people have to get fooled or lied to before they start thinking for themselves? And,
it's difficult for people to think for themselves. They feel
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
Like choosing a political party like a hockey team is insane.
Yeah.
Like Pierre has my vote because he's not the Liberal Party.
Right.
But
Yeah.
like if he starts being a shithead, then like
Yeah.
you know, I'm not, oh well, I don't like these guys, so I love these guys.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
I mean, by default, I don't trust any person that wants to be a politician or becomes a politician.
Yeah.
Because they're professional bullshitters. Even the good ones have to bullshit. But yeah, like, I mean, like you said, like picking a team like it's a sports team, and being tribal. Like, human beings just love being tribal.
They do.
And it's like they find comfort in the tribe. But it's common sense. Like we have to do things that make sense. The past 9 years, I mean, nothing has made sense.
No, everything. It's really diluting the Canadian culture.
Mm-hmm.
And Trudeau even was on some news show, and he was like, we don't really have a culture, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's like, then why are you so upset when, Trump, who's off the cuff all the fucking time?
Yeah.
It's like,
This
you're going to be the
Canada
51st.
bullshit.
Yeah. It's like, so now that matters.
Yeah.
Because the big bad orange man,
Yeah.
said that, but it's like,
it gives them something to distract from their failing policies. And it works because you see the polling numbers increase on their end.
Yeah.
Because Canadians are just like with their heads in the sand, and get distracted by, like, who gives a shit about Trump? Like in Canada, like it's really not our concern.
no, it isn't.
Like, why do people know more about what Trump is doing than what Trudeau is doing? Like, you talk to anybody in Canada about like the speech Trudeau gave the other day when he, he's since resigned, but he's like jet setting all over the planet, flying around as much as he can. And he goes to Europe and he says that Canada has spent $20 billion on the Ukraine war, and he hasn't ruled out putting Canadian troops on the ground. And he said everything's on the table. Like, if you had said like that was Dick Cheney's playbook from like 2003, I totally believe that. And but the Liberals would be like that is the devil. It's essentially like, you're funding a proxy war. The money is going to the military-industrial complex, the whole thing, and you're giving just enough to stalemate the war and not to have the Ukrainians actually win the war. So it just goes on and on and on, and you're going up the Russian war machine, which has a history of just never giving up in these stalemating situations.
Yeah.
And they're willing to go through essentially cannibalism, like what would happen in World War II with the Nazis to defeat the Nazis. Like it sucks, but we have to be realistic at a certain point. And for Canada, that essentially doesn't have a military and doesn't have border security, and according to like the leaders in the military that weren't appointed by Trudeau in their current positions, the state of equipment and infrastructure in the military is critical and is in essentially disrepair. How is it that we can afford to send $20 billion to Ukraine. It's like we don't have the ability to do that.
No.
So where's that money coming from? Like, we don't have that money. So where's it coming from?
Just more and more debt. The painful thing is, like, so Trump and Vance sat down with Zelensky, and people like, they're bullying him. Zelensky is like Jesus right now, and and all this stuff. And like, I think it was Bush Senior and Gorbachev sat down during the Cold War, and they clued it up, and the agreement was, you know, NATO will never take one step into the Ukraine.
Right.
And then the current government in the Ukraine, there was a coup and Zelensky was installed.
Yeah, in 2014. So this is all documented that the CIA helped overthrow the pro-Russian government in Ukraine back in 2014. And then wasn't Zelensky at that time, but somebody that was, you know, in line with like the U.S. back then was installed. And like this is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Like prior to this thing, like this was like widely talked about.
Yeah.
But now you talk about this stuff, and all of a sudden you're a Russian asset, you know, or you're pro-Russian, or you know, you want the Russians to win or whatever. It's just the reality. That you had this Zelensky guy who was like a comedic actor, who I think he played a president on TV.
He did, yeah.
And
which is like,
so if you're looking for a guy as a guy that you want to control and like run this kind of war machine, why not have an actor? You know,
you just give him a script.
Yeah. Now that doesn't mean that the guy's not brave and he's not like, you know, like I don't know enough about him other than those kind of things, but it's it doesn't take a genius to figure out that politically it's not in his interest to have a peace agreement at this time.
Yeah.
And they don't have elections over there right now. So all that is they're in wartime. So I think they don't have to have elections until their war is concluded. I think that might be specific to them. I don't know. But what do the people want over there? Like, is there a vote or a referendum determined? Like, do the will of the people there want to continue that war? That's what I would want to know.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody knows that.
There's no way to. It's controlled here.
Yeah.
Like, there's no investigative journalists there. There was one, and he disappeared.
Yeah. So, you know, I would want what the people of Ukraine want, you know? You know, but at the same time, I mean, that doesn't mean we should be funding that war either.
No.
And because, you know, the U.S. might have the ability to do it, but we certainly do not. We don't even have like the physical like equipment to help them out with it, because we're so lacking on our own.
We can't pay our own infrastructure bills here.
Yeah.
Like we can't pay our doctors. I feel terrible for Ukrainians because they're in an unwinnable war.
Yeah.
And it's basically a blender.
Yeah.
Because like Russia can go forever.
Yeah.
Like in World War II, they just threw people at things.
For sure. And then there's another thing that came out recently that since the Ukraine wars popped off, the European Union has spent more on Russian gas than they have on like actually defending Ukraine. So what's it for then? If you're paying the Russians more than you are the Ukrainians, because it's all like money that goes one way or the other, but it's still money. So they're still paying the Russians more than they're paying the Ukrainians. And, you know, like, where's the European Union in that? Where's the accountability for them? Like it's just, but again, like there's no, in the mainstream media, and this has become such a left or right issue, or a Trump or the left issue, that people will just immediately shut you down or dismiss you for not supporting Ukraine and just being like a Putin lover.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know?
No, it's easy to use a pejorative to get you to stop talking about something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do you love, Putin? It's like, no, this makes no sense.
Yeah,
like,
and that's been their playbook for the last 10 years with a lot of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember when Tulsi Gabbard got called a Russian asset by Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And it's like, she spent 2 tours as a medic in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
That should have been career ending for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, she got that white streak in her hair from while she was deployed overseas from all the stress of like, you know, dealing with people and her teammates and her and the troops that were like blown up from IEDs and gunfights and all this stuff.
Well, even RFK Jr., who I think is like a great man, like I think he's a real noble dude, and they're like, well, he's an anti-vaxxer. Yeah. It's like,
have you heard him even talk about it?
Yeah,
because he's not.
He is not.
He's
no,
not.
he's
like you know, he has questions and concerns about particular vaccines that then again they use that as pejoratives and then just immediately say, oh, he's a nutcase.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or you know,
but then it gets rolled out to all the news agencies, and he can be dismissed.
Yeah,
and then all the
he's a very impressive guy. Like
he is.
If you look at like his history and the environmental work that he's done, like I think he's responsible for like cleaning up the Hudson River.
He did, yeah. He's successfully sued Monsanto.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he's done all these incredible things.
Back when the left considered Monsanto and the pharmaceutical company the bad guys.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, before they got better PR. Yeah, he was.
Yeah. But you know now big pharma is they're the
darlings.
Yeah,
they're the darlings.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it you can really get sardonic about the whole thing, like and kind of like just believe that we're fucked. Yeah. Like especially with Canada and when you see like you see the homeless populations exploding and these tent villages and tent lazy encampments popping up in every city. I mean, when would you ever thought like 10 years ago you would see like a tent city in St. John's? You'd never. I mean, before I left for the RCMP in 2007, I think we had like one homeless person. Like we had like one homeless guy. His name was like Hobo Bill or something.
Yeah, he was famous.
Yeah, because he was like, that's our homeless guy.
Yeah,
and now it's like rampant, right? So like things are supposed to get better over time, not worse, because when you have investments in technology and resource acquiring resources and all these things, I mean, you'd expect a first world country to continue that momentum, but I mean, all these policies and ideas that were cultivated in like university settings that sound great on paper in like some kind of weird fantasy land, when you implement them in real life, they're just not practical.
Absolutely. Well, you're in a walled garden.
Yeah.
Where you have a lot of times professors who have never been in the real world.
Yeah.
They're still in that place.
Right.
And you can make all these immature ideas about how the world works.
Yeah.
But especially like the middle class is the backbone of a country.
Yeah.
And there's people out there working 12-hour shifts so that we have lights,
And especially like with like criminology and the whole push towards restorative justice. I mean, like what a failed experiment that is.
Yeah.
I mean, the recidivism rate for people that get locked up and then let out right away or whatever. I mean, it's crazy. Like restorative justice does not work. But if you were to take a criminology class, you might even take one today, and I don't know what it's like today, but they'll tell you for a fact that that's the way to go. The justice where you're just penalizing people and locking them up and having like strict penalties for people that do bad things, it's just overly punitive, and it just creates more hardened criminals when you lock them up in jail. That's all bullshit, So it's shown that when you have strict penalties for things, that the strict penalties work, So it's just, especially from a law enforcement perspective, when you arrest somebody for some horrific crime, and if they don't have a criminal record, or even if they got a criminal record these days, they're released on no cash bail, within 24 hours, because you have to bring them before a justice of the peace or a judge within 24 hours of their arrest to have a bail hearing where you're either going to hold them in custody and present your case as a prosecutor as to why you need to hold them in custody, or have some kind of cash surety to make sure that they comply with their conditions. So you're arguing that as the prosecutor, and now the person who's up for that remand hearing or bail hearing, they're going to argue as to why they will follow their conditions and why they should be let out. But nowadays they just let everybody out. They let everybody out.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Well, even with kids, you never threaten with anything that you're not willing to pull the trigger on.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's a bad lesson.
Yeah.
So if you're like, you're going to be in timeout for, 20 minutes, you can't let them out early.
Right.
And if you're like, that toy, you'll never see that toy again.
Yeah.
It's got to go.
Yeah.
I
mean, you can use this. I mean, it's just basic, psychology for animals. I mean, you can test this stuff out on dogs, So, I mean, if you don't have like my little Frenchies, man, they're little clowns and they're little jerks. Like, they'll try to run the house if I don't have some structure in place for them, right? They have to be locked up at least a couple hours each day, so they have that time to settle down, have a nap. But because if you just leave them out to their own devices all day, next thing you know, they're they like to play wrestle and stuff, but they'll snap at each other and whatnot, and they'll get like saucy, and they'll
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, they'll get like, they'll start walking around like they own the place, like instead of the kennel being their kennel and that's their little den, the whole house is their kennel and that's their den,
Yeah.
So even when somebody comes to the door, like if like a lot of dogs that aren't kennel trained, they're more likely to like bark at the door and whatnot, because when somebody comes to the door, because this is their den, this is their little kennel, the whole house, I mean, and so they're protecting this whole space instead of just their kennels. So yeah, I mean, that same shit applies to criminals, so you just can't, especially for like drug-fueled violence or drug-fueled theft,
Yeah.
We just don't have the resources to implement restorative justice in the way that they want it, that in a perfect world they want it to be implemented anyways. Because to do that effectively would probably cost like 100 times as what they need now, and you need like an individual caseworker for each criminal that goes through. They need their own program that would be like a fortune, and it's just unrealistic, and even then it may or may not work.
Yeah, it seems like everything they're doing these last couple of years has been a failed experiment.
Yeah.
I know you don't have a lot of time. I want to get your it's 1:45.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We can do another one. Yeah.
Just want to get your opinion on one thing.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's see it.
So this is a self-defense device.
Is it taser?
No, I'll show you.
Introducing the 𝐬𝐿, the non-lethal self-defense platform. Lightweight and simple to use. It uses an easy-to-load 5-round magazine and is powered by an 8-gram CO2 cartridge. Byrna launchers fire a 68 caliber chemical-filled projectile using a patented pull-pierce technology where the CO2 canister is only punctured on the first trigger pull, meaning your launcher is always at the ready. It's capable of incapacitating an attacker for over 30 minutes and is accurate and effective at over 60 feet. It requires no permits, no background checks, and is interstate travel friendly. With Byrna, you will be prepared to defend.
Shoots kinetic rounds.
Yeah.
So,
like, how fast do they said the rounds go? Because that'll depend if it's classified as a firearm or not in Canada as well.
let me see here.
It uses an easy-to-load 5-round magazine and is powered by an 8-gram CO2 cartridge. Byrna launchers fire a 68 caliber chemical-filled projectile using a patented pulp-pierce technology where the CO2 canister is only punctured on the first trigger pull, meaning your launcher is always at the ready. It's capable of incapacitating an attacker for over 30 minutes.
It's funny they have a time.
Yeah, that's complete bullshit.
No background checks and is interstate travel friendly. With Byrna, you will be prepared to defend.
Yeah, I mean, it would suck to get hit by that for sure, but one of the first things they teach you as a cadet in policing is that not one of the first things, but when you go through or at least back in the day, when you got OC sprayed, when you got pepper sprayed, you're supposed to be able to go through an obstacle course and fight through that. If somebody is in cocaine induced psychosis, or they're on crack or on their meth, they don't give a shit if they're getting hit by pepper balls like that. They don't give a shit at all. So it's a projectile, but it definitely doesn't hit as hard as a less lethal shotgun. So, I mean, a less lethal shotgun has that effect where you can drop somebody with a less lethal shotgun. But even then, it's an impact round. So it's meant to stun them temporarily. So this is a mix of an impact round and an irritant of some kind, probably some OC. But that sucks. That sucks.
Okay.
Hate to ruin it for you. Like, you're better off having a big old Jesus can of beer spray, that you can just hose somebody with, because those little pepper balls, and when they hit the person and explode, it's an irritant, but you're not going to be hosing somebody's face with it, like with a can of beer spray. And beer spray, the good ones, I mean, they go up to 40 feet. So that's enough to cover any real distance in your house. You just aim for somebody's face with that, and that's going to fuck them up way worse than that thing can. Because at the end of the day, if somebody was shooting at me with that would just piss me off more.
Yeah.
If I would just run right at the person and just like eat them as a cover. I'd catch one in my mouth, man. And so, you got one in the eyeball, that would suck. But you wouldn't be from a cop's perspective, you wouldn't be allowed to aim that at somebody's eyeball. But yeah, I doubt that that's legal in Canada. Like a projectile OC, because they put enough restriction on regular OC. So if you buy beer spray, it's supposed to be meant for beers and safe, like when you're in the woods and whatnot. But it's also a weapon of opportunity if it's in your house and it just happens to be laying around, and somebody is trying to kill you when they come into your house. You can also get like smaller cans of like dog spray, which is OC spray as well, but it's lesser. It's
so what is OC? What is that?
I forget what it's 𝐾𝐨𝐬𝐵𝐾. It's I forget the whole name of it, but it's essentially like an extract of a really spicy pepper, and like super refined pepper. That is, it's put into like a CO2 canister in a mixture, and you spray somebody with that, and it sucks. Some people are immune to it. There's like some percentage of people that it doesn't affect at all.
Really?
One guy in our troop got sprayed with it, and it had zero effect on him. Got him right in the eyeballs, and he said like he's been sprayed before, and he's like, yeah, it doesn't affect me. And he got sprayed again, and he's just there like, the rest of us are like, snot is just like flowing out of us, and we're hacking, and our eyes are swelled up, and he's there just like chilling, like,
This is great.
yeah, like no problem. But that I would not recommend this thing. Nothing against Byrna.com or whatever, but
not endorsed.
No, it would be more fun playing paintball with that and like, shooting your buddies with it.
That's right.
But I would imagine that hits similar to a paintball.
Okay.
if it's coming from a CO2 cartridge.
Yeah, and the cartridge isn't that big. The projectile's pretty big, so I guess.
Yeah, and the barrel length is small too. Like even with paintball guns, you're having most of them have like a fairly long barrel. So I can't imagine unless the CO2 was just like absolutely nuts. Yeah, I can't imagine that those projectiles go very fast, which would mean that they're just not that powerful. And this thing about them talking about incapacitating somebody for up to 20 minutes, like guarantee you that's made up.
Yeah.
Guarantee you.
Yeah.
Or they got one absolute weakling in their testing pool that they dropped with that thing and like cried like a bitch for 20 minutes, and then they're like,
perfect.
Off
Write
20
that
minutes.
down.
You know? But yeah, that wouldn't slow me down at all. Wouldn't slow you down. Wouldn't, you know. So it would be more of the way that would actually be effective would be as if you fucking just spray painted it black and called it a gun and pointed at somebody and say, I got a gun, I'm going to shoot you, and then hope that they don't call your bluff.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know you got your appointment